Question number 12, Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Prime Minister. Was Ian Fletcher the candidate or one of the candidates named in the report to him from the State Services Commissioner following the panel interviews for the position of Director of the GCSB? If not, who suggested that Mr Fletcher be considered for the position of Director of the GCSB?
Honourable Jerry Brownlee, on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, yes.
Order. Order. This is a question on notice. There are two specific parts to the question. Well, is the member happy with that answer? Okay,
yes.
Then we will proceed.
Extremely happy.
We will proceed.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Did the Prime Minister accept the first recommendation of the State Services Commissioner for the person to be appointed to the post of Director of GCSB following the process begun in May 2011?
Honourable Jerry Brownlee.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, my understanding is yes.
Question, Mr
Supplementary
Speaker.
question, Grant Robertson.
Did the Prime Minister either directly or indirectly intervene in the process for the selection of the Director of GCSB?
Honourable Jerry Brownlee, on behalf of the Prime Minister.
On behalf of the Prime Minister, the State Services Commissioner has the role of identifying persons who might be suitable for that role, then conducting appropriate discussions with those people, and finally making a recommendation to the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister ultimately makes that appointment, and of course there were discussions through that process.
Supplementary question, Louise Upston.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Supplementary question to the Prime Minister. Would the Prime Minister please outline for the House the background of Ian Fletcher?
Mr Speaker,
Honourable Jerry Brownlee, on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Yes, I'd like to do that. Before being appointed as Director of the GCSB on the recommendation of the State Services Commissioner, Mr Fletcher was Director-General of the Queensland Department of Employment, Economic Development and Innovation. He performed that role under the State Labor Government at the time. Prior to that, Mr Fletcher was Comptroller General and Chief Executive of the British Intellectual Property Office. And prior to that, Mr Fletcher was Managing Director International for the UK Trade and Investment, a similar organisation to New Zealand Trade and Enterprise. Mr Speaker, the facts are that Mr Fletcher had a strong background which spanned across a number of countries, and he was appointed because he was the best candidate for the job.
Supplementary question. Order. Supplementary question. Order. Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. In the first report from the State Services Commissioner on the recommendation for who should be the Director of the GCSB, was Ian Fletcher in the top two candidates?
Honourable Jerry Brownlee, on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, my understanding is that there was no recommendations in the first report.
Mr Speaker.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
In the first report, were there two shortlisted candidates recommended to the Prime Minister?
Honourable Jerry Brownlee, on behalf of the Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, my understanding is in the first report there were no recommendations for appointment, and there were therefore no 1 to 4 rankings applied.
Point of order, Honourable Trevor Mallard.
Mr Speaker, the question was very straight. Were there two shortlisted candidates?
But I think the question was more related, was there any favoured ranking to those? And he said the Minister said there was not.
No, it was a very straight question. Were there two shortlisted candidates? And I could not tell from that answer whether there were or there weren't.
Well,
you have four but not have two shortlists. We can give you the answer, but I'll
well, no, we're going to make progress. I'm going to ask the member to ask the question again, and I'll listen very carefully to the answer, and I will then make a decision whether I think the question has been adequately addressed.
In the first report, were there two shortlisted candidates?
Honourable Prime Minister.
On behalf of the Prime Minister, it is my understanding that there was no shortlist in the first report.
That concludes questions for oral answer. Honourable members, I have received a letter from Dr Russell Norman and a letter from the Honourable. Point of order, Honourable Trevor.
Mr Speaker, I'm aware that you have received an urgent question relating to $23 million worth of leaked bank account details by the EQC, which has been revealed today. The names, the amounts and the bank account details of hundreds of Christchurch people, 2,000 Christchurch individuals, money amounts totalling $23 million, have been revealed in yet another leak from the IQC, which I think is only EQC, which has only become apparent this afternoon. Mr Speaker, we're approaching Easter and we do need a level of assurance from the Minister that he is on top of it. And, Mr Speaker, I can't think of anything more urgent than ensuring that a Minister is ensuring people's bank account numbers' privacy.
And I was dealing with this matter through question time. The advice I've received is that this was information that was available this morning prior to the lodging of questions, and on that basis I did not accept that because it was the information that was...
Order, Mr Speaker. I provided authentication which showed that this was only available to the opposition at 1:23 this afternoon.
And the information that I've been given by the Clerk of the House is it was available. The member may not have picked it up. I haven't got that detail with me, but it was available earlier in the day, and therefore on that basis...
Mr Speaker, Mr Speaker, the authentication which was given to you showed that it was available to the individual to whom it was leaked over a month ago. It was available to that person. That person followed it up with the EQC. He asked the Chief Executive to respond. The Chief Executive did not respond. All the evidence about this massive breach came to the attention of the opposition, and we understand no media yet at 1:23 this afternoon.
Order. Can I just seek some advice from the clerk, because the authentication has not actually been provided to me as the member state. It certainly has been provided to the Clerk of the House throughout question time. I would just take a minute to seek some advice.
Over 2,000 people. 23 million. Yeah, well, that's it's all the listed unpresented cheques. $23 million worth of unpresented cheques, and all the individual names.
Upon seeking advice, and particularly on the basis that Mr Brownlee's indicated he's quite comfortable with asking the question, I'm going to allow the question to proceed as an urgent question. Honourable Leanne Dalzell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What action is he going to take to stop further